Hi, good afternoon. Uh, I'm Charlie Rufino. I finished in LaSalle. I finished my Bachelor of Science in Business Administration in 1971 in Taft Avenue. And I finished in 1966 in LaSalle High School, also in Taft. So, in terms of setting up my company, I suppose this is probably my third or fourth company that I'm involved with. Most of the other companies that I'm involved with are still around. Sometimes I start the company, sometimes I work for a larger company. So maybe going back to 1995, I'm here in my office in Fort Bonifacio. I work for a company called Fort Bonifacio Development Corporation, and I was the senior vice president in charge of the planning and marketing of Fort Bonifacio. So uh, so many years hence, I'm now sitting in an office building in an area that had nothing but a golf course and a military fort at one time. So it's quite exciting to be seeing so many things around and being involved in the early days. And this was much of an open field. Well, I started in real estate by chance. Uh, the company that I was working for was actually a mining company. I was only an office manager. It was my first job out of college, and they entered to a joint venture with another company to put up an office building in Legazpi Village in Makati. At that time, Legazpi Village had just opened, and it was pretty much an open area, and we put up the first office building. At that time, times got very difficult. The economy was hit by a very bad storm, and a lot of people lost their inventory, and we were not able to uh, recover some of the income that we were supposed to get from sales. So the projects stopped for a while, and when it restarted, they wanted somebody to take over the joint venture. One party sold out, and we took over. So from being an office manager, I became an office developer overnight. So it was a very difficult situation. I didn't know much about real estate, except that my father was very much into real estate and I would go with him to hardware stores to buy things, etc. But I really didn't see myself as being a real estate developer. I thought of a lot more exciting things that I would rather be than that. But I think what is interesting in real estate is once you get involved in building something, is that it just engulfs you. There's a term, they call it the edifice complex. Once you build something, you feel very much a part of it, and sort of like as you still start building these buildings, you know that they're going to be there for quite a long time, and you feel proud every time you pass by. So you sort of feel good. I mean, there are many people who can make money, but sometimes putting up buildings gives you a sense of real satisfaction because they're there, they're real, you see them every day, and you feel a real sense of accomplishment. As they say, concrete concrete accomplishments. You see it in concrete. So I suppose going to that, that's how I got started in the real estate business. Per chance, I got to love it, and once it's in your blood, it's very hard to take out. So every building is sort of like giving birth to a child. You go through the whole love-hate relationship, and when the building's finished, it's like your child is born. You really enjoy the fruits of your labor. Sometimes 2, 3 years of hard work that culminates in the completion of the building, a simple or ornate inauguration. And I sit back with the team, and we have that sense of feeling of success, of having accomplished something is really unparalleled. It really builds up your confidence and your ability to do the next even harder project. It's going back to LaSalle, I think gave you a very good basic background. I finished liberal arts, so a little bit of accounting, marketing, philosophy, literature. I think it really rounded me up. So I didn't come out of school lacking sort of by being too selective in a particular field. So it was like I had a very open mind, and that really helped me a lot going to business. And furthermore, as you go into business and you join other groups, like I was very much involved with the Rotary Club, having another set of friends, uh, then business associations. I do believe it's every time you do something new, your mind opens up and your network opens up, and you're finding there's really a whole new world out there, and you should never be sort of like in a cocoon by yourself, because sometimes you don't want to extend yourself, but you find out because you're worried that there may be problems or challenges that you can't handle. But when you're there, you're finding out that you just created your own anxiety. But really, there was never a problem. And when you're there, you find out I can do this, and I'm fine. Uh, well, I suppose that's the biggest thing moving forward is that you're always surprising yourself about what you can do. You finish your school and you're looking at your first job and what you have to do. You achieve a certain position and you go to the next. And I suppose you always build on what you have. For some people, it's getting your first car, and then after you get your first car, what's the next thing you're going to do? And then for some people who are very lucky, they're already thinking about more expensive toys. And there are people who do in monetary terms, they think of earning this first amount and then the second amount, and soon they're finding out that as we reach those goals, they are much easier to achieve once you reach a certain amount. The first million is the hardest, the 10th million is easier. But the biggest, I think, problem of them all is that you should remember that at the end of the day, what's that word that they said? I'm trying to recall. This is a very interesting saying about it has something to do with who you are, and if you're saying it's more like making sure that you don't get consumed by a drive only for the material, because at the end of the day you're wondering whether who drives what. Are you striving for something or something else is controlling you, simply because you have your simple report card is, oh, I should have so many marbles or I have so much money compared to the next guy, and you find out that that becomes a goal of itself, and you no longer, you lose yourself, you see yourself change. There was a very rich industrialist that was asked one time in the United States, so how much is enough? And he couldn't answer. He says, just a little bit more than what I have. So of course he will never reach that. I think of most LaSalle values. I don't know whether we always joke about the Athenians and the LaSalle guys. LaSalle, we're short on words. We just want to speak by our action, right? So at the end of the day, I think what the most I learned from LaSalle, one of the biggest things is that no excuses. You just perform, do what you're supposed to do. You're gonna be sort of, you have to really take the the punches if you didn't really do well, because you're responsible. At the end of the day, it's who can deliver. So I suppose in every project you have people who talk a lot and people who do the project. So I would rather spend more time in getting something done, because as they say in many businesses, it's not only you don't have to just do the talk, you have to walk the talk, you have to do the talk, right?
Yeah.
I've had several mentors. I suppose the first mentor I had was my first job, and he was someone who tried to simplify most of the work, because I think it was my first job doing a bit different. It was doing a subdivision, and he was doing 32 subdivisions at the same time. So I was wondering, how can you do 32 subdivisions? And you have to do it by formula. You have to make it very simple. He would talk to a contractor. He would ask the contractor what his cash flow would be to build the roads, etc. The person will say, it will take me 1 year to do this. I will charge you so much every month. He'll write down a few notes, and he says, okay, fine, thank you. Then he talks to the agents, how long it will take to sell. He talks to the surveyor, laying out the plans. And it was very much a process and a system. And if you do that and you do it over and over again, I suppose you know what not to do and what to watch out for. So the first thing I learned is everything has a process. Sometimes what is best is not knowing how to do everything, but learning what not to do or what to avoid. Because if you make a mistake, then it's so much more time consuming to fix that problem. I think my second mentor, on the other hand, was a gentleman when I did my first office building, and he was very much a stickler for quality. And I noticed that when you shift your mind and you say, what I want to go for is the quality, then the profit comes. When you design for profit, it doesn't necessarily come. But naturally, when you go for quality, the profit, aside from the quality, you always get the profit because a lot of people see value in the things that you do. So I think those two learnings from those mentors really had me in good stead. And I still remember them very fondly. They're both passed away, but I still remember them very fondly. Well, I suppose in everything you're always learning and growing because once you think you know it all, then obviously you're gonna be left behind because the only thing that's really happening in this world that you're very sure of is there's always change, and you can be part of the change or you can resist the change. So I think very often we try to get involved with traveling abroad, getting new ideas, seeing how the competition is doing their thing, and learning from that. So I think you have to be very flexible. You have to also assume that sometimes your paradigm is wrong. It's time to change, and the old rules don't normally work all the time. And there's now this new phrase, the new normal. You have to know when there's a new normal. Well, there's a book that talks about different types of leadership, and I think the one that best describes me, leadership by walking around. Because I get very antsy just sitting in an office space. I have to go out there and see. I always tell my sons who are working in the business, it's what you inspect and not what you expect that gets done. So if you're willing to accept people telling you in the office what is happening outside, maybe you're not in face with reality. I found out that in every project, if I can be involved in every job site meeting and I hear the people directly working, telling telling us on a weekly basis what the progress is, and soon you learn who can perform and who cannot perform, and you start weeding out the non-performers because you can tell after 1 week what they promised they didn't do. And I think it's the sort of pressure you bring as the owner when the guy who signs the check goes to the meeting and listens to you. You better perform because he might say, "Well, you're not gonna get paid. I'm gonna hold your check next time because you're missing your deadlines." So I tell my kids, really, management by walking around. Don't stay in the office. Go around, listen, feel, and you can sense the work, whether the people there are relaxed, and out of sight, out of mind. If they don't see the owner or the leader or the supervisor there, you don't exist. So I do believe that's very important. Well, I suppose you have to be really honest and true to yourself because people say it's what they see. It's not what you preach, but what they see that people follow. Because you have to be sort of a leader by example. I mean, you cannot say one thing and do another thing, and people get confused. I suppose you have to come to grips of honestly with what you want, and to speak plainly, and have no agenda when you talk. You talk from the heart, and sometimes even though they say it's a bad trait to be straightforward and honest because people take advantage about you. I find out that it's really the worst because if you're guarded and secretive and you talk to people, they're also guarded and secretive. So they also don't tell you exactly what it is. So I think it's a trade-off. If you're honest to them, they might be honest to you. Well, I suppose at the end of the day, you can always make sure that you have a passion for what you're doing. You have to like it because I think hell on earth is to wake up every day and not look forward to the day because you hate what you do or you're forced into a situation you're unhappy with. I think if every day you get out from bed with a sense of this day is going to be something where I'm going to do something, accomplish something, it's a great way to start. And I do believe that that outlook from LaSalle has always been very good. I think the liberal education, from high school then the college, the openness to ideas, the camaraderie and the friends. I think that's engendered with everybody, feeling that yeah, you can have a good can-do attitude. I cannot do this. I can achieve this. Well, I suppose when you first go for your interview, you have to really show people who you are because first impressions really matter, and you have to, if you really like something, you must be able to say why you think you're going to help that particular organization or why they would choose you. Like in everything else in this world, you have to make an impression, And first impressions really count a lot. It's very hard to change a first impression. So if you go to an interview and you're walking slowly and you're slouching, chances are your boss will think, well, this is really you all the way. So you have to be sort of like sharp, and if you're really naturally enthusiastic, it's great to show it because everybody wants enthusiasm. They can teach you a lot of things, but if you're the type that's sort of like deadpan and you're sort of lethargic, and I think it's you're so much harder to carry as a personality. You know, I do believe I go for the energy and the inspiration, and it's great if they also have the smarts, you know, because of course everybody wants to. They call it now the new term is reverse mentoring. Like not only the boss learns, but they learn so much from the new things. You know, the new guys coming into the workforce. They now have a different set of skills that the older guys never knew existed. I suppose there comes a time in your life when you look back and you say, okay, I've done this, I've done that, and I'm happy and contented by myself. Maybe I should try to do something more for nation, for community, for the world, if you really are thinking on a large scale. And in my case, I've started to devoting a lot more time to non-profits in my industry. I'm heading a group called the Urban Land Institute in the Philippines, and it talks about real estate and how to improve real estate in every aspect, whether it's the planning of things, livable cities, environment. So it's the sort of thing that makes me have a good feel. So I think that the giving back is so important at a certain point in your life. You try to be paying back. It's payback time for all the good luck that you've had, for all the advantages you've had. You've had a privilege, you've had a good education, you have had, in my case, a fantastic family, success in business. So it's time to give back and to share.